Welcome to It Takes Two.
I'm Clarissa, the couples therapist.
And I'm Charles, the marketing professor, talking shop on relationships, mental health, and
finances within a committed relationship.
All right. Well, hey, we'll cover the question, are finances really the number one cause of marital stress and divorce? Why? How? What can be done? And what do dogs have to do with it?
We will also share a fun date idea and connection question you can use with your partner to take your relationship to the next level. So make sure to stay tuned till the end.
Okay, so let's start out with introducing our first guests ever on this show. Two very special guests. Let's give a warm welcome to Milo and Nacho. What do you boys have to say? Yeah, that's them playing. It's obnoxious and loud and wild and crazy. But why do we bring our dogs onto our show? First off, we have two sheepadoodles. We are obsessed. We love them to death. For our YouTube viewers, here is a photo of them. Oh my gosh, look at them.
Adorable.
They're so freaking cute. Okay, so the reason we're starting the show off with dogs, Psychology Today published an article. Doctors Jen Golbeck and Stacy Colino published research on why you should talk to your dog more. It's good for you and your pup. So it's good to keep that conversation going. Dogs respond to the emotional tone of our voices, research shows, and there's actually a neurochemical event that happens when you're looking eye to eye with your dog and talking to them in that sweet sing-songy voice you use to communicate. So, Clarissa, how do you talk to Milo and Nacho?
Oh, this is kind of embarrassing you're asking me.
Yeah.
Oh, let me think. Okay, it's different for each one. I think with Milo, it's like, oh, Milo, you're such a big boy. And then with Nacho, it's like, oh, Nacho, hi, baby.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
exactly what I do for both of them. They're just so different. So their personalities, I speak to them in how I think that they would interact with me, I guess.
Yeah, how you imagine their voice sounds.
Yeah.
No, totally. So Milo, he's 85 pounds. He's a big boy.
Yeah.
And so saying, I'm like, oh, what's up, Milo? Who's a good dude? That's kind of what I do. And then with Nacho, I'm like, oh, Cookie!
Yes.
That's
exactly what you do.
So, yeah, but apparently there's been some research that shows when you talk to them in that cutesy voice, they recognize it, first off, and they actually like it. It releases oxytocin in their brain that calms them and makes them feel love and happiness and all those different things. And the research also showed that when you use your dog-directed speech, is what they call it, and make eye contact with them, it builds trust with the animal. It lights up these different parts of your brain that release the stress-relieving neurochemical oxytocin. On a related topic, research published in the journal Anthrozoos. That sounds interesting. Maybe I should subscribe to the Anthrozoos journal. That sounds fun. They found that some people are more comfortable confiding in their dogs about unpleasant emotions, such as depression, jealousy, anxiety, apathy, and fear, than they are with their partners or friends who are confidants. The researchers speculate that this may be because dogs are non-judgmental listeners. I don't know if we've ever said anything more true on this show.
Yeah.
They are just the most loving, willing listeners. But, I mean, that's so interesting because I think a lot of people struggle, especially men. I'll speak for men. It's hard to vocalize emotion sometimes. And it's hard to admit and acknowledge and recognize because of some toxic masculinity traits that we can overcome that and practice being vulnerable, practice touching into our emotions by using our dogs as confidants.
It's amazing. Yeah. I mean, they call it man's best friend for a reason, I imagine.
Hey, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think a dog is going to replace your therapist as far as a non-judgmental, unbiased third party who can help you with your emotions or mental health or whatever it might be. But hey, a dog, pretty damn good.
I mean, the chemical oxytocin, like that releasing in your brain is like a pretty big deal. So I don't know. I might be going home and not home to work and prescribing some dogs.
Hey, that's a good idea. We actually wanted to make Milo and Nacho therapy dogs. So maybe this is another nudge in that direction. What do you think?
Absolutely.
Listeners, if you knew that there would be an adorable teddy bear-esque doodle dog waiting for you in therapy, would you be more likely to go?
I cannot wait to hear what people think.
Maybe we'll do a poll.
Yeah.
Let's do a poll. I know I would.
Same.
All right. Before we move on to our main topic, let's listen to our rockin' disclaimer.
This podcast only provides information. It's not a viable replacement for a therapy session. If you need help or have an emergency, contact your local mental health authority. Our hosts are experts on mental health. Many of our guests are too. This podcast does not provide expert advice. It's just entertainment, baby. Dates and places to change. This podcast should never replace real therapy.
Clarissa, let's start with a question for you. Prior to becoming a marriage and family therapist, what did you assume were the reasons that married people or people in committed relationships broke up, separated, divorced?
I probably assumed intimacy, finances, and infidelity.
Okay. When I asked myself this question, I thought it was finances. I thought number one cause of divorce is finances. I think I've read some publications about that. But in preparation for this podcast, we were doing some research and we found some new insights about finances influencing a relationship. So after becoming a marriage and family therapist and being an expert and a professional in this career for as long as you have, what role does finances play in causing marital stress, strain, or committed relationship challenges, those types of things?
It's much more about finances seem more of like a symptom of like greater things. So finances probably could be like a very logical thing to be like, oh, that's why this relationship didn't work out. But finances are just a symptom of like deeper issues, like of communication, not being on the same page. Maybe your values don't align. Trust. I think there's a bunch of trust in finances. And then as well as stress.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of listeners and a lot of people in general, when that new calendar year flips over, we're thinking about finances. Mm-hmm. And we're thinking about where we ended financially last year, what we want to do this year. And that can cause a lot of stress. Mm-hmm. A lot of stress. Going to the data, there was this article published in Forbes, and with a grain of salt, this was only 1,000 people surveyed. But what I liked about this data is that it's current. It's 2023 was this publication. And I just want to touch on a few things about this. One of which is the most common reason that people got married in 2023 isn't what you would expect. It said women were more likely than men to indicate that they married for financial reasons, with 44% of women reporting that this led to their union. Contrast that with the second most common reason why women got married, which was 39% of them said that they were marrying out of love being the main reason. Isn't that interesting?
That love is second place.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
44% of women saying that the reason they got married was for financial reasons. Mm-hmm. And then 39 saying that love was the main reason. For men, conversely, the number one reason was companionship, with 39% of all men saying that is why. However, and 42% saying that was the motivation. But then financial reasons was number two for men as well. So a lot of people this last year got married because their finances would be improved from that union. What's your take on that?
Yeah, that's actually pretty interesting. And I think it makes the most sense that it's women are reporting that, just because we are still coming out of this like traditional format of a home. Like, it's dual income is way more common nowadays, but it's also like that still hasn't been like the norm. So I think like women are more likely to try and find a financially secure partner than maybe for love, which is just blows my mind. Like, it's 2024.
Yeah, that was weird. I almost got like the 2024. No, for sure. To add to that, there is a gender inequality income gap.
Yeah.
And women, and there are some studies that show different levels of income disparity. Industry matters, experience matters, all these different things. The Forbes article presented that women are on average being paid 22.2% less than men on average in 2022. That's massive.
2022.
And so
22%.
Yeah.
22.2%. Wow.
In 2022, that was a lot of twos.
Yeah, that's a lot.
But it makes sense then. I mean, if you're in a committed relationship with your partner and you're doing the same exact thing, they're getting paid 22% more than you, get married and like average that out.
Yeah. But it also makes sense why for men, I feel like when they're looking for a partner, their expectation isn't necessarily a financial partner, like necessarily, right? Like, again, this is 1,000 people. They're not representative of like the entire population of everyone on earth, but generally there is a stereotype that men don't have the expectation that their partner will be as much of a contributor, whether it's because they want a traditional marriage or because they know women like don't usually have careers or don't get paid as much in careers. Like, it's just interesting to see how that's playing out.
Yeah, I would love to see also geographically where these survey participants were.
That would be really interesting.
Because I agree, with what you just said makes a lot of sense for that suburban or even rural demographic or population. But
or
I
even
wonder,
like certain religious cultural populations.
Absolutely. Age, like what ages are we talking about here in this survey? Because again, I think older versus younger, if you're in the city, maybe it is much more expected that the woman and the man are going to be equal contributors. Children playing into all this is another do you have pre-existing children? Do you not? Because again, we talked about this on a previous podcast. As you age, your values change in what you're looking for in a partner, and finances becomes more and more and more important over time as you get older in your dating career.
And evidenced by Golden Bachelor, Gary Turner.
Yeah, that's right.
Which they get married this Thursday. I don't know if you realize that that's coming up, like televised and all that.
Wow.
Weird. I probably won't watch it, just being transparent, listeners. But
did anybody ask for it? I'm just teasing. I think it'll be cute. But you're right. I mean, I think that pragmatism is what led Gary to pick Teresa. Even though he probably didn't expect to have a co-provider. So he probably has that more traditional value. I don't know, though. Don't want to make assumptions for him. So going to the opposite end, why do people get married? Well, why do people get divorced? And going back to what you were alluding to earlier, where finances is more of a symptom than the actual cause. 59% of people who dissolved their unions within the first year of marriage cited a lack of compatibility.
Whoa.
That validates exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is interesting. Most couples who married for companionship, financial security, convenience, insurance, legal reasons, or a desire to start a family blamed a lack of compatibility for their divorce. It's also unsurprising that people who are motivated by factors other than love, such as legal reasons, convenience, or a desire for security, may find that they are not compatible with the partner that they choose.
Yeah. I also think like love is like a lubricant, not to like use that word, but like love is a way.
Lean into that. I love it. Love is a lubricant.
Love is a lubricant. How many times can we say this? To people feeling more willing to work their issues out. So like if you have a lack of compatibility, but you're very much in love, then I feel like you're going to be more willing to like really figure out that compatibility issue, or maybe even try to be more compatible than you are if you don't have a lot of love.
That makes sense. So therefore, if you are marrying somebody or courting somebody for financial reasons, you probably don't have that lubricant to smooth out the abrasive conflicts that can arise in any relationship.
Yes. That's why like when you work on like communication or conflict resolution, it is so important to still have like a vulnerable emotional bond of love and whatnot, because it gives you the ability to be more willing to figure out your crap.
Yeah. I know we're talking about finances. This is just a quick tangent. Those who married as a formal act of commitment, a formality, their boyfriend, girlfriend, and okay, well, I guess we should just get married essentially as a formal act of the commitment that they have, were more likely to end the marriage due to a lack of intimacy. Their desire to cement the relationship via marriage may have been an indicator that they felt this close connection lacking even before the nuptials. And so I'm thinking, they've been dating for 11 years and they aren't sure if they should get married or not. And they're like, well, I guess, we married 11 years, we should get married. Or maybe that's why they don't feel this sense of connection and intimacy. So maybe getting married will fix that.
Whoa. That's actually interesting. And then they don't find it.
Yeah. And then those who married, this one's so relevant to our immediate community. We're in a very religious community here in Utah. We are, it's more conservative, more traditional. And there's tons of this. So couples who married due to societal or family pressures were most likely to divorce due to extramarital affairs.
Holy crap. Like that's chilling.
Because there is all this pressure in the society and culture to be married as a form of chastity and fidelity and those things that you would assume is the antithesis of extramarital affairs, right, and cheating and debauchery.
Right.
But when there is societal and familial pressures, those marriages are most likely to end because of cheating.
It's interesting. It's almost like their intentions they never really had strong intentions to be married or to be in that level of commitment. Like they got married without those intentions. So like maybe an extramarital affair doesn't seem as bad in their head because like their intention was never fully in it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. But what's fascinating is arranged marriages, which you would think is the ultimate form of societal and familial pressure. Right. Arranged marriages have an overall higher success rate than non-arranged marriages. Now, there's a lot of factors that go into that, obviously. There's a lot of cultural differences between like finances, absolutely. Like a lot of arranged marriages are mergings of family units. It's a more community, society, and culture. There's a lot of different elements that go into it. But it is just fascinating to see this almost contradiction that in our culture of America, that if you marry because of societal or family pressures, that marriage is most likely to end due to cheating.
It's just so wild.
Fascinating. Okay, getting back on track to finances. Financial. One of the things that Forbes says in here is that financial stress can be a warning sign that a marriage is at risk. However, as we've mentioned here and on the data, it says that finances being the 6th or 7th reason why a couple actually ends up divorcing. So, Clarissa, you mentioned earlier it's a symptom. What can couples do who are experiencing financial stress to interrupt that spiral of conflict or incompatibility? Or if you're feeling like financial stress is a challenge in the marriage, what would you tell a couple?
We definitely need to talk about finances and like work those situations out, because like you can't ignore that problem. But I would say in addition to like working on your budget and goals around finances, you should also be working on your overall and general communication and connection. Because like I said, but also like we were talking about with this, like the love lubricant, it's like if you aren't in a good place in your relationship in general, I think finances are just going to be more and more explosive. So don't ignore the financial aspect by just working on the general communication and connection, but also don't forget that stuff and like make sure you're taking care of those areas too.
Okay, yeah. And this, I should have looked this up for a data point. I'm sure it exists. But there's this trope, this stereotype of in a couple, there's a spender and a saver. There's usually one and the other, and they're at odds. And so as you were talking about being on the same page as your partner, that love is a loving lubricant, all that. What, have you seen that spender saver trope played out in your clientele? And how do you navigate those conversations when the values of the individuals seem at odds?
It's definitely most often there's a spender and a saver. I don't think that every couple hits that, but I think that kind of as I've talked about, like the weaknesses of like being like by pulling clinical data only is like people who are talking about financial stress with me, they probably are at odds with like a spender and a saver. Like the ones who aren't talking about finances with me probably don't have a financial problem. And so maybe they are more aligned. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so, yes, I think that trope exists. But then I also want to say like my sample size of it within the clinical realm is also probably biased because people are talking about it because it's a problem.
That makes sense.
So in that though, like you definitely need to like talk about your goals and what you're trying to accomplish. But then it is really hard because I feel like at the end of the day, it's up to each individual to keep themselves accountable towards that goal. And yeah, that's easier for the saver. Like it just is going to be easier for the person who's saving, who doesn't spend as much. But for the spender, like that comes with a lot of shame and baggage and things for them. And so they need to also figure out like what goes on for them that makes them want to spend more, and like what is that, what's the like underlying feeling with that.
Yeah. And
then working out that underlying core issue, but then also being accountable to themselves and not necessarily their partner, or else that's probably going to cause more problems / not really resolve it in general.
Yeah, you mentioned feeling. What's the underlying feeling? And you also mentioned not shaming and feeling guilty, because spenders, I think it's pretty easy to make the assumption that spenders spend to get a feeling. There's this endorphin rush. Maybe they're avoiding some negative emotions, and so they're spending more. But let's not get it twisted. The saver is saving because of emotions.
This is true. It just benefits this issue, right? Like
right.
Their underlying emotions, their underlying crap is benefiting their financial well-being.
Yeah.
But it's still a problem.
But savers like to pretend that they're being pragmatic. That the reason that it's logical to be a saver, when in all actuality, they're very much driven by an underlying emotion of, I'm afraid of not having a safety net, or I'm afraid of potentially ruining a future opportunity, or those different things. And so it's really important for savers, just as you said, not to shame or guilt the spender for making emotional decisions, because you need to check yourself. You're probably a saver because of your previous relationship with finances. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up, because in that regard, then it could also be really healing for the saver to exercise a little bit of freedom with money, again, within reason. But like if you don't buy nice things for yourself, or like if you don't take time off from work or go on a trip or something because of this like scarcity and needing to save, then that's going to be just as like, not just as, but that's going to be in its own way detrimental to you mentally, and then therefore freeing or liberating to be a little more like have fun, like almost like a treat yourself day, like from Parks and Rec, you know, like with Ben, who's like
treat yourself.
And how the treat yourself day that Ben from the show goes on, he like ends up buying this like super nerdy cosplay of
Batman.
Batman.
Yeah,
Batman.
he buys a full Batman suit.
Full Batman suit.
And he comes out and Donna and Tom are like, what? Like, this is what you decided?
Yeah.
And then Ben turns around like embarrassed, like, I know, this was a dumb idea. And then Tom and Donna are like, no, this is what treat yourself is about. If this is what you want to spend your money on to like make yourself feel like you're treating yourself, then you're doing it. And then he starts crying.
Yeah, because I'm sure that was very emotionally healing for him to be like, yeah, I'm worth it. I'm my like silly, like fun, quirky things about me that I would spend my money on is worth it, because like it therefore shows him that he has like value too.
Yeah.
But
it's an amazing example because Ben is an auditor for the government who hacks the budgets of local governments.
And very clear. And and that's interesting. Sorry, now that you just said that, it came from because he totally splurged with Icetown, remember?
Yes. He had a previous trauma
of spending so much of the city's money
on
and making a city go bankrupt. And so he like swings all the way to the other end. So it probably really is healing to that like trauma of his of like Icetown and like things like that. So I'm glad you said it, because it's like, I think often we can be like, okay, savers, you got to do this and this and that, or spenders, you got to do this and this and this. But then you're right. Like it could be really beneficial for the saver to also engage in like balancing out the couple a little more.
Yeah, and then the spender feels less personally attacked when the saver is maybe emotionally lashing out a little bit and being like, hey, why'd you spend that money, blah, blah, blah. The spender can be like, oh, you know what? Like, this isn't just a me problem. The saver might have some past trauma relationship with money that's causing them to maybe overreact or struggle to manage their emotions. And so I guess that's maybe the ultimate point we're trying to make here is that spender or saver, finances and financial stress, they're founded in emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talked about setting goals with your partner for finances, maybe having a conversation about your relationship with money and where it came from might be a good starting place.
Definitely.
So, Clarissa, you actually have some additional resources to help couples with their financial management. You want to introduce those?
Yeah. The resources that I wanted to bring up today is actually a whole relationship assessment system.
Okay.
It's called Prepare and Enrich, and you can only take the Prepare and Enrich evaluation if you have what's called a facilitator. So I'm actually registered as a facilitator. I went through some like specialized training for this. And so this is something that I can provide to my couples. But also if you hear me talking about it, then and you're interested in it, then you can go on to Prepare and Enrich and find a facilitator near you. But also if you're local in Utah, then I could also be your facilitator. And then if we're friends or family, then I'll help you find a facilitator if you're really interested in.
And they can do this virtually, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So the whole concepts that I wanted to share from it, though, is like, yes, to teach you about something like Prepare and Enrich, because it is really, really great to evaluate your relationship, but then also to share like the concepts that they found are really great when it comes to like premarital relationship stuff, but then also to married couples who are already struggling. So their concepts cover the meaning of money, the priorities, the financial goals, and the budgeting. So with the meaning of money, there's a questionnaire of like what money means to you. And the categories that they split it up into is money is a representation of status, security, enjoyment, or control. And so it's a Likert scale of like 16 questions. And you say like, for example, in the money as enjoyment is question 9 through 12. So it's, I really enjoy shopping and buying new things is question number 9. So for me, I'd probably put 5. I definitely really do enjoy shopping and buying new things. And so then you total up like your scores along there and figure out what your meaning of money is.
Yeah.
really, really cool. So again, if that interests you, like, please reach out or like search Prepare and Enrich, because it's a really cool concept. But I also want you guys to brainstorm without having going through the program of those concepts: status, security, enjoyment, and control. Is if that's the meaning of money, like, what do you hypothesize is your meaning of money?
That's incredible. I love how it broke it down into those 4 different categories, because again, it just highlights that money isn't the same for every person. Not everybody views money in the same way, and everyone has a relationship with money because of how they were raised and what experiences they've had in their life. And we can't just project and assume that our partner is going to have the same view when it's so unique. I have a conversation with my students. I'm a marketing professor, as I've mentioned, and so we talk about lifestyle and careers and money a lot in my courses. And oftentimes students are motivated most by money. They want a major that'll get them the job, that'll get them the most money. And I always tell them this. I say, hey, listen, you think you want money, but really what you want is control. So it's interesting that it's the 4th one, because this is why I always tell them, listen, if you made $300,000 a year right out of college, hey, that's a great amount of money. But if you have to work 10-hour days, 6 days a week, who controls your life?
Interesting. Yeah.
What you want is control over where you live, what you live in, what car you drive, how often you get to travel, what kind of food is in your fridge. And so I always reduce it down to control. And I try and tell my students, when you're thinking about a career, think about lifestyle management. What do you want to have more control over? And so I just love that that's part of this. It's just so cool to see that overlap of those values and whatnot.
Yeah. I think also, just for this meaning of money, and then I'll move on to priorities, but it's also really interesting because it's like, well, how unfair is it to say that finances is the number one reason for divorce versus status, security, enjoyment, control? Like, these other deeper meaning concepts are so much more indicative of how you spend or save or budget.
That's so good. That's so good.
Yeah. The priorities conversation, these are examples that they pulled up, but also you can think of your own. But basically asks, where would you put your money, or put your money where your heart is? Where would you spend your money, and how does that reflect your priorities? So there's housing, groceries, transportation, travel, credit cards, exercise, dining out. So these are just the ones that they share. And for example, the way that they do it is they have another Likert scale, but so for travel, the Likert scale is number 1 would be camping. Number 3 is Holiday Inn. Number 5 is a 5-star suite. And so as a couple, you kind of list out okay, for travel, what really is your priority? Do you like more of the camping experience, or do you have 5-star suite, or somewhere in between? And so then that's how they rank. And then I guess another good example would be the groceries one, because it's number 1 is ramen noodles. Number 3 is spaghetti and meatballs. Number 5 is all organic all the time. So then it ranks your priorities on how you would spend your groceries. Super, super cool. So again, I want you to start brainstorming with the concepts that I already said of housing, groceries, transportation, travel, credit cards, exercise, dining out. What are your priorities? And you don't have to go off of how Prepare and Enrich does it. I just want you to start brainstorming what you think of.
What I absolutely love about this is it is quantifying. It's gathering data to a very qualitative thing, a very emotional thing. What's great is the saver who claims more logic and pragmatism can actually create a mathematical formula based on these Likert scales. And you could say oh yeah, I am spending X amount of dollars in something that I value so much in my life. And then it's good for the saver or the logical person or whatever to see, oh wow, you know what, that all organic food isn't just 30% more. This is so important to my partner. It's not that they're a spender. It's just they really value this thing. And I just think having that perspective gives voice to the spender and allows them to feel more understood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's cool because it even directs them to say have a discussion. Where do your priorities align? Where do they not align? How do you want to match those priorities? Just things like that. So it's really cool.
So good.
The next two I'm going to go kind of quick through because they're pretty self-explanatory, but it directs you to do financial goals for short term and long term. So the short term, they identify that from 6 months to 1 year. And then the long term is 1 year to 5 years. And that's partially why I feel like talking about it today was important to us, is because it is still in the new year of 2024. And so I think it's really like a nice transition moment to start making financial goals for your 2024 and then beyond. But yeah, they say list 3 short-term ones and 3 long-term ones. And both you and your partner should list your own and then kind of look at both and see which ones are maybe similar or different. And then the last thing that they have you do is do a budget worksheet, which I think that every couple, at least once, but also preferably monthly, should be looking at a budget worksheet as far as where is your money going? What are you doing with it? Because the number one thing I would say I see in therapy with spenders is that they are spenders because they avoid looking at where their money is going.
Oh.
And so if they don't know where it's going, it's almost like it doesn't exist, but then they keep digging themselves into a hole. But avoidance is like a very strong thing that comes up for spenders. And so doing a budget worksheet and looking at that several times a month, or at least when you get your paychecks, is so important.
Yeah, I was on Reddit doing a little research for budgeting. I'm on the investing Reddit. I'm on a few other financial ones. And so I was just going through that in preparation of this podcast. And it talked about, there's a lot of people posting saying, I make so much money, but I don't feel like I have any left over and I don't know where it's going. And over and over and over and over in the comments, it's like, it's probably eating out. It's probably eating out. You need to download an app tracker. Like there's some free ones out there, but it's almost always eating out. I thought that was so funny because it is. It's just so easy to eat out and not think about it. Because as you were saying, spenders spend because they aren't watching. They aren't looking. Mm-hmm. And when you eat out, you're like, oh, well, I'm hungry and I got to eat. So I'm just going to eat out.
It's justifiable.
Yeah, that's $20-$30 multiple times a week. It stacks up quick.
Yeah.
But you're never going to know unless you actually do your budget.
Yeah. But yeah, it would be really great for couples to sit down and look at their budget. I think the last thing that I want to say is not every couple shares finances, though I still think that these exercises do apply to you, because even if you don't share your finances in one bank account and you keep it separate into 2 bank accounts, you still have shared expenses like rent, or if you're living together, or children at times, or if you go out to eat together. Like there's still times where you're both spending money on the same thing. And so it's still good to like have these conversations. But I also acknowledge that like keeping your money separate is not better or worse. Like everyone always says like, what do you recommend? What do you think is best? And it's like, I think that it is so specific to the couple that it's not whether you keep it separate or together, but like how well are you navigating those conversations?
And to that point, we've had this conversation where we've actually evaluated whether we should separate our finances.
Yeah.
We chose to keep them together. However, we both agree that if we were ever to divorce or one of us died and we were to go into another relationship, that we would keep our finances separate.
Yep. Yeah.
So I love that. There's not one way better, just pros and cons to one or the other.
Yep. It's all about how you navigate it.
Love it. Okay, Clarissa, well, let's wrap up with some takeaways. What did we cover?
We covered that money is not necessarily the cause of divorce, that usually it's a deeper meaning for divorce, but then also like there's deeper meaning to how your money habits represent themselves.
Love that. And what were some things that they can do to help manage finances for the new year or in their relationship and to reduce that stress?
Talk about what money means to you as far as like the control, security, enjoyment. I forgot the fourth one.
That's all right.
Talk about the meaning of money between you and your partner for you individually, whether it's status, security, enjoyment, or control. be sure to talk about your priorities with different things like housing, groceries, transportation, travel, credit cards, exercise, dining out, and beyond, because I'm sure there's some categories that doesn't cover. So like, how much money do you want to spend on those things and how important are they to you? And then make sure to have a list of short-term goals, long-term goals, discuss those, figure out how you're going to execute those, and then make sure that you're doing a budget worksheet together to determine how you're going to execute those financial goals, but then also to help understand where your money is going and how you're spending or saving, because avoidance is definitely the thing that will keep you from reaching those goals, or at least is a very major factor.
Yes. And no matter whether you do all of these things, you still might be feeling stressed. And if you are, make sure to look deeply into the eyes of a dog and talk to them in a sweet, cute voice. And you'll get that hit of oxytocin that'll bring down your stress and you will feel much better at the end of the day.
If you don't have a dog, then borrow one.
Yeah, just go to the dog store and just play with some puppies or something.
Or the foster homes or what
the
they're
shelters.
Called. The shelters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great idea.
The last thing would probably be the connection.
Yeah.
Were you going to go into that?
What are we doing for the date idea and connection question?
The date idea that I was thinking they should do is choose one evening and allocate like a number of hours to it, and then split up those hours by each choosing a free activity to do. I think like you should find a free activity outside the home or within the home, whatever is best for your circumstance, but something unique and new, like come up with a great idea, not just like one that you do every day or something, Yeah,
just hop onto Bing AI or ChatGPT and
honestly, you could
ask
probably
AI
ask like, what's a free date idea?
Yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off.
But just a bunch of free date ideas and it'll create a huge list. And if you don't like it, just say, hey, I want more fun ideas. And asking that second or third question to chat, that's where you get the good stuff.
Yeah. Just reminded me that another part of Prepare and Enrich is coming up with $0 one, like 0 money sign, 1 money sign, 2 money sign, 3 money sign date ideas is like one of the Prepare and Enrich things. So that's also something you could come up with. But I recommend for my date idea today that it's just something free. And then within that date idea or within that date, I want the connection question to be actually one short-term goal and one long-term goal. And then discussing like why that goal is important to you and how you want to accomplish that goal. And choosing like 1 or 2 from the list, from each list.
I absolutely love that. It's a great idea. Transparency, honesty, candor. Those are some of the most important things when it comes to this conversation. Now, one thing that the Forbes article talked about that I want to bring up here is that getting professional help to navigate finances and the emotions surrounding it is crucial. And there are 2 people that it suggested. The first was a financial advisor, and the second was a marriage and family therapist.
What?
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Right?
That's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you need help having these types of conversations, again, you don't have to be in crisis mode to start therapy. If it's just something you want to do to improve your relationship and take it to the next level, therapy is an amazing way to have these candid conversations about finances and everything else in life. So if that's something that intrigues you, please reach out. Psychology Today is a great resource to find a bunch of different therapists that could help you. We're not sponsored by them. We're just calling it out. I can hear my boys barking in the back. My dogs, they want me to look deeply into their eyes. So we're going to get going. But Clarissa, just remember, for things to get better,
for me and you,
it takes 2.
And apparently the dogs.
Yep.